Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Good Orderly Direction, Practical Tools of the Bible. Today we're discussing Genesis 38, the story of Judah. I'm your host, Dr. Donnelly Snipes. At this time, Judah, who was one of Jacob's sons with Leah, moved away from his brothers and married a Canaanite woman whose name was Shua. She bore him 3 sons. Judah's eldest son, married a woman named Tamar. But died. Judah said to Onan, his middle son, "Go to your brother's wife, do your duty, and provide children for your brother." Onan knew the children wouldn't be his, so he made sure not to get her pregnant. The Lord considered what he did as wrong and put him to death as well. Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Stay as a widow in your father's household until my son Shelah grows up." Judah feared Shelah would die like his brothers if he married her. So Tamar went and lived in her father's household. After a long time, Judah's wife died. Then, after a period of mourning, he and his neighbor went up to Timnah. Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is now on his way up to Timnah to shear his sheep." Tamar realized that she had not been given to Shelah as a wife. Now, Shelah was definitely old enough by this point. So she took matters into her own hands. She took off the clothing she wore as a widow, covered herself up with a veil, put on makeup, and sat down at the entrance to Timnah. Judah saw her and thought that she was a prostitute. Because he did not know she was his daughter-in-law, he propositioned her. She said, "What will you give me for sleeping with you?" He said, "I will give you a kid goat from my flock." She said, "Only if you give me some deposit as security to guarantee that you will send it. Give me your seal, its cord, and the staff in your hand." He gave these to her, slept with her, and she became pregnant. Judah sent the kid goat with his neighbor so he could take back the deposits from the woman. But the neighbor couldn't find her. Judah said, "Let her keep everything so we aren't laughed at. I sent the goat, but you couldn't find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar has become a prostitute and is now pregnant because of it." When she was brought out, she sent this message to her father-in-law: "I'm pregnant by the man who owns these things. See if you recognize whose seal, cord, and staff these are." Judah recognized them and said, "She is more righteous than I am, because I did not allow her to marry my son Shelah." In this lesson, Judah acknowledges his own failings. He recognizes the law said that she was supposed to be able to marry the next in line, and he did not allow that because he was selfishly wanting to protect his last-born son. So acknowledging failings, acknowledging our sin by itself is an act of repentance. However, knowing it and admitting that we've done something wrong is far different than actually learning from it and beginning to change, recognizing this is not an appropriate way to be and I need to change. When Judah was behaving selfishly, he lost a lot. Think back to Genesis 37, when Judah convinced his brothers not to kill Joseph, but to sell him into slavery. So Judah kind of, sort of tried to do the right thing, but he really didn't back up his brother Reuben very strongly in opposing his brothers. He was being a little bit more selfish. Remember, Judah is a son of Leah, not one of the sons of Rachel. And so Judah's was of the group of boys that were less favored by Jacob, or Israel, as his name became. In Genesis 38, he loses his honor when Tamar is thought to be a prostitute. Remember, at this time, and I think even some still today, when one of our family members does something that the community views as shameful, it often reflects on the family itself. And at this point in time, Judah was the head of household, and this definitely reflected poorly on his household, and which impacted his standing. And when we think about good orderly direction, doing the next right thing in order to work towards a rich and meaningful life, we can see that the importance of doing the next right thing, and when bad things happen, even if they're not necessarily directly our cause, if we've indirectly caused them, they often harm our abundance. After this, Judah becomes more selfless. He decides that he's going to step up, admit what he's done, and care for Tamar's twins. Judah's leadership and his acceptance of the law in dealing with his daughter-in-law propelled him to prominence among tribal leaders. So he admits that, okay, these actually are my kids. She's not a prostitute. She kept it in the family. At that point was more in line with cultural law. He then pledges responsibility in Genesis 43, obviously we haven't gotten there yet, for Benjamin, who is the youngest son of Israel, Jacob, and Rachel, and pleads with Joseph for Benjamin's life in Genesis 44. So we see all of a sudden, Judah has said, you know what? I'm seeing my brothers are not doing the right things, and I am going to step up. I'm going to do what's right. And every time he does what's right, he ends up with greater blessings. When he was doing what was wrong, when his brother was sold into slavery, he essentially lost his father. His father became very, very withdrawn and depressed and was just never the same. He was inconsolable. And then Judah ended up moving away. I feel that maybe the strife that was caused in his heart because he knew what he had done was wrong, and his resentment towards his brothers for spearheading it may have caused him to separate from the family. And he ended up sort of isolated as he moved away. And obviously he married a Canaanite woman, which was also something that was not really looked on with favor at that point in time. Judah's lineage through Tamar eventually becomes the house of Judah and produces the most important Judite, King David. And so as I was saying, we see here Judah becomes more and more abundant as he starts becoming increasingly selfless. He recognizes, hey, it's not all about me, and I need to do the hard things, not just halfway like I did with Joseph. I need to do the hard things. I need to step up and do what's right. And when I do, good things happen. The main principles of good orderly direction that we see in this story are earnestness and integrity. When Judah behaved with earnestness and integrity, good things happened. And that's generally what happens when we follow good orderly direction. When we follow God, we tend to experience abundance. We grow our network, we grow our wealth, we grow our personal worth. We also see the principle of selflessness. And as I mentioned, when Judah was being selfish and thinking of himself before what's the right thing to do, it caused him a lot of problems. And it didn't necessarily cause him personal pain. He wasn't injured, he wasn't excommunicated, but it caused him pain in his heart. And when we behave selfishly, that causes a lot of pain in our heart and strife among the people that we love, and we lose some of our support. We lose some of our abundance, if you will. When we're selfless, it's a different story. Now, selfless doesn't mean putting everybody else first at our own expense to our own cost where it's hurting us. Judah wasn't doing that either. Judah said, I will step up and I will take responsibility for what I've done. But he's not going out of his way to give and give and give to everybody, and in order to make them happy at his own expense. He is simply doing what is right.